Hi there. I'm Heather Plett with the Center for Holding Space. This week, I want to introduce you to a journey that I call the Spiral of Authenticity. Some of you may remember it from my first book, The Art of Holding Space, where I first introduced it. This is something that emerged for me probably 10 years ago when I'd been working with a lot of people in person and online doing coaching and facilitation work and really recognize this pattern as something that many of us go through, especially at the midpoint of life somewhere where we're in transition and wanting to go into a deeper journey, which I refer to as a return to soul. So let's get started a little bit on this journey. First of all, there's a beginning point. At some point, almost every one of us reaches a point where we look at ourselves in the mirror and we ask, who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? Why do I feel like I'm perhaps living out of integrity with myself, that I'm making choices that don't really fit with who I believe myself to be? And that awakening at some point, and sometimes it comes through a major disruption where there's maybe we have to go through deep grief, we lose someone, we have a major failure at some point. There is something that kind of wakes us up. And that awakening is a soul invitation into the spiral of authenticity. The journey, and I've used similar to a labyrinth. It's a journey that takes us inward on the spiral and then back outward. And in spiral journeys, we talk about there being three parts to the journey. And the path inward is the release, where you're letting go of something, where you're peeling away what no longer serves. And then at the center, there's a place of receiving, the second part of the journey in the labyrinth. And that's where you're receiving the gift from spirit, from source, from self. And then on the outward journey, we talk about the return, when you're bringing that gift out back to the village, as it were, back to your community, your people. So let's talk a little about each of those three stages. First, the inwards journey is the release. And that comes after, as I say, a period of awakening. There are several words along that journey, and they're not necessarily in order the way that I've placed them here. They can bounce back and forth, and we can experience more than one at once. But the words that are there are, first of all, insecurity, a time of feeling like you're no longer safe in the world, perhaps because there's been disruption, there's been some change, some awakening. And then there's a period potentially of disconnection where you feel kind of distant from the people you're in relationship with. Maybe you don't feel like you're being understood and seen anymore, or your true self is not valued in your communities. So there's a time of that kind of disconnect, and yeah, there's a breaking away, in a sense, from your community of origin. And then there's a releasing, and that releasing is unlayering some of what once mattered to you, letting go of the things that you thought mattered, or that were important in the earlier part of your life. And then there's some unmasking that has to happen, some revealing, some taking away, peeling again. It's those onions, layers of the onion that you're peeling away to become closer and closer to who you really are. Then there's the truth telling, learning to be honest with yourself, learning to tell the truth about how you're feeling, about the experience that you're having, about the disconnect that you're feeling, the dissociation, perhaps. At some point in the journey, there's almost always healing, because some of the earlier part of life may have wounded us or shut us down or disconnected us in a way that requires some healing work. And that may be therapeutic work, or it may be other ways that we find that healing. And then there's an opening. There's a opening up to the possibility that you'll find at the center of the journey. The center of the journey is the place that I call soul. If you've read my book, in the book I referred to it as the open heart, but I'm adopting a more and more of this language of soul because it resonates with me. And some of the words that are present at that center are words like deepening and presence and dreaming and connection. There's a time of really going deep with yourself and it's a dream time as well, a time of deep rest when you're really settling into yourself and finding that kind of peace with who you are and connection. Bill Plotkin is one of the people whose work I really admire in this regard, and he writes a lot about soul. And one of his quotes is, "Your soul is both of you and of the world. The world cannot be full until you become fully yourself. Your soul corresponds to a niche, a distinctive place in nature, like a vibrant space of shimmering potential, waiting to be discovered, claimed, occupied. Your soul is in and of the world, like a whirlpool in a river, a wave in the ocean, or a branch of flame in a fire." So it's both soul in you and in the world. It's that deeper connection that you're receiving at the center of the journey. And then the outward journey is the return, and this is a really important part because we do not connect deeply with our soul unless we also learn to connect deeply with other humans and more than human world and the natural world and spirit. So there needs to be that coming out and returning and reconnecting and religamenting, as in a sense, in our connection. So some of the words that are on that journey, again, not necessarily linear, but there's an emerging that's happening. There's a revealing, beginning to reveal your truest self. There's learning to trust in the world differently, trust in people, find trusting relationships that really connect to who you are. And then there's also the connecting, reconnecting. There's rising. There's a sense of that kind of phoenix rising from the flames and coming out and being the truest self. And there's an offering. There's something that you're bringing to the world. There's a gift, a sense of calling. And then you emerge to a place of greater authenticity. Now, it's important to remember that this is not necessarily a one-time journey. I say that it often happens towards midlife. Some people have earlier occurrences of it. But there is a returning to that journey again and again. When you emerge, you will have greater connection to your soul, but then you'll always be invited back in again to deepen that journey, to deepen that connection. So it's not, again, never linear. It's always spiraling back in. If you want to learn more about this, you can read about it in my book, The Art of Holding Space. And also, we have an upcoming course for 4 Sundays in June. And this is in 2025, if you happen to be watching this video later. The course is called Know Yourself, and you can find out about it at centerforholdingspace.com/know yourself.